Hello everyone, I'm Extra Cheesy 87 and this is our third bonus video for Trails Into Reverie. I don't know, this whole section's gotten kind of weird for me because at first I was like, oh, there's gonna be one bonus video where we do all the daydreams and the talking and wrapping all that up, and now it's looking like it's gonna be 3 videos. Because last time we did the Rin white daydream and then we unlocked another. Now, presumably there's just that one more that'll be unlocked. Maybe there's a bunch. Maybe there's 25 of these, which would be pretty cool because these have been great. The Rin one in particular was a lot of fun. Now, they do make you do this weird thing every time, which is a little strange, but you know. And you can't fast forward. Can you see? Yeah, you can't skip it. The threads of fate and all that. Alright, forward sword in hand. Who do we think this is going to be about? I mean, if Reen didn't already have one, I would think maybe him. And maybe Duvali. I could see Duvali showing back up to get clowned on. September, year 1207 of the Septian calendar. Cannot accept. I was not one to mince words. Hulking bear of a veteran brazier Zin! He has a last name? What the hell? I think it's one of those things that they tell you like twice in the entire trilogy. Could not hide his disappointment, puffing out his bottom lip as with a sigh as he stood before me. Not again. You gotta resign yourself to the inevitable one of these days. I've been indebted to this man, who was as capable as he was kind in my first days in the guild. Truly, I didn't wish to be a source of vexation for him, but the wish alone was not enough. I have neither the experience nor the skill to be worthy of A rank, so I cannot accept your recommendation. Bracers are assigned ranks based. Is this the young bracer lady that we were told about? Bracers are assigned ranks with their strength and achievements, with A rank being the highest, on paper at least. It's members of the very face of its beloved organization. As such, ranks are a metaphorical badge of honor to be worn with pride. How I received multiple recommendations for the most prestigious ranks in 6 months because I'm cool. I'm the coolest person who's ever cooled. I spared no effort in working to hone my craft in the years I joined after school, and certainly, I didn't classify myself as a doe-eyed newcomer, but to have my name among the greats of the guild, absolutely not. After turning down my first recommendation, a second one had come from the guild's headquarters in Le Mans. Ask me, you've got both in spades. There's something else making you lead towards a no? Finn's all red smile told me that he had been pressured by headquarters to persuade me. I folded my arms. Setting aside whether you're overestimating me or not, which I believe you are, I would very much like to not stand out any more than I already do. I'm getting offers to be a model to star in films. You're already making me eye roll, lady. I don't even know your damn name, and I'm already eye rolling at you. It's been frankly exhausting forcing them to give up. Now, what do you think would happen if I were to accept a promotion? I'd be neck deep in the same mess all over again. Yeah, that makes sense, but sorry, you're a 1-2 punch in the beauty and bronze department, trying to lay low as a lost cause. Kind of fans you're getting, maybe you should consider the silver screen after all. Who knows, you might walk away with an award from the film festival. Zen's laugh was hearty in contrast to my unamused frown. Once I respected him, he could do with showing a little more decorum. Decorum? You know the word. You already know the vibe, man. That's not funny. I understand being in the public eye to some extent is inevitable, and I've accepted it, but I'm a bracer, not an entertainer. Wasn't trying to be funny though. You gotta find a way to let off some steam, or you're going to break when you I can't fucking read, man. My brain is fried from the Rin thing. Well, there was also the 30 minutes of NPC talking before that as well, and I did just take a very small break to get coffee, so maybe I should have taken a longer one because the brain is not working. You gotta find a way to let off some steam. You're gonna break when you need to when we need you put together the most. Happens to workaholics like you more often than you think. I didn't think I was pushing myself as much as he implied, but I also couldn't deny there was a nugget of truth to what he said. We're getting off topic. That's why his headquarters so desperate for me to become an A-rank bracer? I can't see the logic behind it. Well, you see, starting with what you know, the reparations from Mayor Boney have beefed up our economy this year, so all kinds of new investments are pouring in from all across the continent. Now, I'm no economist, but people go where the money's at, and where people go, conflicts follow. And that's just how it is. I saw where he was going from there, electing to expand upon the rest myself. So now we have disputes between megacorporations and a stark increase in Jaeger activity. These are in addition to the known growth of private military companies and increased tensions between mafias. You got it. You think it's bad now, it's only going to get worse from there. While Lamam wants to up security here while promoting our rising star, you. See, it's good PR for the guild and a deterrent to any potential threats that are thinking about stepping on a line. Perhaps I was more vaguely aware of their goal in using me than I wanted to admit. This didn't make hearing the answer any more satisfying. Have you asked me to play my part, then surely they have asked you to play your part already. You've been recommended for S rank, haven't you? You know of a better deterrent than having an S rank in Calvert, then I like to hear it. Zen scratched the back of his neck awkwardly upon my statement. I just think I'm up there with someone like Cassius Bright. S isn't even an official rank, and even if it was, just look at me. You think a guy like me is a picture-perfect advertisement for the guild? I think you have the skills, achievement, and build to be one, yes. A curt, quick response. Alright, point made. Can't force you to take the recommendation, and I'm not about to be a hypocrite. Just, let me know if you change your mind, okay? With that, the conversation came to an end, and the guild's bracers gathered to begin our routine meeting of delegating open requests. This is how I preferred things. It was better to stay like this. The point when I wanted to be something more. I don't really remember when that was. Sometime during my childhood it happened, I'm sure. I just recall realizing how small the world truly was. I prayed and longed to become someone I was not. Around high school when I thought I became that someone. Those years were unforgettable. I'll never forget the unexpected reunion that was had there, nor the priceless treasure I'd gained. I truly thought I'd gotten closer to who I wanted to be. But in the end it was just wishful thinking. My hand, once held, was now empty. I was still a nobody. I refused to stand still. I grew unrelenting in following the new path I chose for myself, ignoring my family's objections. My motivations had changed, however. I no longer possessed the girlhood desire of becoming something more. Or becoming someone. I just needed to keep moving, however aimless that movement was. Oh, we're looking gorgeous today. The whimsical wink, a familiar bartender welcomed me to his establishment. He was a tall, affable man who lived by his own rules and never hesitated to lend a helping hand to others. He reminded me much of the Crossbell City's branch receptionist from the few times I visited there for work. The place was nearly empty today. I sat down on the counter furthest from the door as he approached. Usual, sweetheart? Stopped by here after a hard day's work on occasion, and whenever I did, I always ordered coffee and a light snack. This was not a coffee and snack kind of day. I want something with alcohol, even beer will do. I don't know, fazed with the vagueness of my order. He walked away and started preparing my drink. It wasn't long before he returned and placed an elegant glass in front of me. I think it was a little more you than beer. Beautiful cocktail composed of two colors, a clear blue like that of a priceless saffron and a calming jade. No doubt he could tell how disquieted my heart was and was trying to soothe it in his own way. I thanked him inwardly before daring to broach my other reason for coming. You got any meth? Have you learned anything more about what I asked? Apart from being a skilled bartender, he was also a well-known informant. He was extremely well connected to the guild, the press, and even the criminal underworld, but he was very careful never to overstep his bounds with that last one. Indeed, I found him to be a valuable source when needed. I wish I could say yes, not even Dingo. Hey, you heard about Dingo? You guys just learned about him. Has any promising leads? He's the one journalist in Calvert, the only journalist that we have. The single one. You're going to be hearing about him a lot, presumably. I guess makes sense. I mean, we didn't really have like a dedicated journalist guy in the Cold Steel games. I mean, there's kind of Vivi, but that's only really in CS 3 and 4. And there's like photography guy, but he's not really like, you know, he's not on the level of Grace or Niall, whatever his name was. Nail, something like that. I think you guys in the right district. It's only a matter of time before they get smoked out. I see. Since the guild's investigation turned up nothing, I was hoping he would better point me in the right direction, but it seemed this was going to be a lot harder than I hoped for. Things will work out. Just pace yourself and keep it up a little bit at a time. Also plus that cocktail. It's a strong one, so don't drink it all at once. He tilted the glass delicately between my fingers as he stepped away, mine continuing to wade through the case I was following. There had been a stark increase in illegal drugs on the market. Not just any drugs either, but ones of highly addictive, dangerous varieties. So they turn you into a damn demon? Anyway, who effectively ruled over the criminal world in Calvert, ordinarily limited their proliferation in the market as part of their rules. Limiting the number of drugs was of course far from the ideal elimination of them, but none could deny the syndicate's actions had brought some semblance of order to where chaos often reigned supreme. Yet the past few years had seen a worrying number of criminal groups rebelling against these carefully curated rules. One of these groups was surely behind the change in the market. And all of this held a presumed connection to two missing people. The guild and the police had been tasked with searching for two children below the age of 10, a boy and his younger sister. They simply left the house one day and had not been seen since. Evidence suggested they came from a perfectly ordinary family on good terms with one another. The likelihood of them running away was slim. We mulled over the suspicion that they had been abducted for ransom early on. Not a single demand was made following their disappearance, so it was quickly ruled out. Despite a healthy amount of manpower that was coming from both sides, neither the guild nor the police had yet to find them. That said, the search so far had not proved entirely fruitless. Their last known location was fortunately established, and it was unfortunately a popular site for illicit drug trade. The working theory from there became that the siblings witnessed a transaction and were held captive by the criminal parties involved as a result. If that held true, then the longer it took our parties to find them, the greater danger their lives were in. I mean, I feel like if they're willing to kidnap children, they'd also be willing to, you know, four-letter word the children. The abductors wouldn't do anything right away. Murder was sure to leave trace evidence behind. Well, I mean, what's going to leave more evidence behind? Keeping the kids? Or not keeping the kids, you know what I mean? It was only a matter of time, but they resorted to that or trafficking abroad to get rid of them. Oh, but it was only a matter of time, okay. Because I was like, I didn't read the but the first time, and I was like, you just contradicted yourself, lady. With each passing second, the odds of the children being returned unharmed were dropping to zero. At the same time, all this was pure speculation on our part based on a single established location. For all we knew, this had nothing to do with the criminal underworld at all. Potential dangers thrown around made inaction an agonizing task, but if there was no evidence to go on, action was impossible. We could forcibly arrest any suspicious people in sight and make them talk should we wish it. That would be a direct violation of the guild's code and its founding principles. The Bracer Guild always sought to be an ally of the people first and foremost, so resulting to criminal acts to obtain evidence was out of the question. Only the strict adherence to our code didn't stop us from being able to resolve so many crimes, thereby putting the people we swore to protect in danger. It was the ultimate impasse. As I found myself pondering on this impossible dilemma, the Bracers had placed themselves in. A familiar face came to mind. It was a childhood friend with blue-tinged, unkempt hair. When we lost contact with one another some years before, he had one day returned to the city as suddenly as he had left it. Soon after starting a peculiar profession that skirted the line of legality to a dangerous degree. The kind of profession that could easily involve himself in the affairs of so many unscrupulous individuals, or so I believed. Just what did that idiot think he was doing? Walked out of my life without warning and walked back in so much the same. I mean, it's not like he was a kid. I don't think kids typically have much choice in walking out of people's lives. Spent so much time searching for him. I knew a reunion would be awkward. An awkward one based on how he parted, but for him to return after all that waiting, all that searching, to dive into some questionable enterprise so different from my own was almost too much to bear. It gave rise to many concerns as a bracer, and many more concerns as a friend. And the one that bothered me most was, why hadn't he come to see me? Did he have any idea how worried I was about him? How worried I am about him? Irritation building, I took a large gulp of my cocktail, but the alcohol only fanned the flames of anger burning in my heart. It burned brighter and brighter, still becoming a dazzling white that projected countless transient images of the past. And just as quickly as it had flared, my anger faded in an instant, replacing itself with a very different emotion altogether. Why did you leave me? Words slipped from my mouth, without me realizing it, making me feel downright pitiful once they were said. Somewhere to see me in this state. So I've moved on, I see. A familiar but unexpected voice called out to me, causing me to jump slightly from surprise. I quickly regained my composure. Man, talk about timing. I have a few choice words I'd like to say. My response feigned calmness as best I could. couldn't help but think that more than a few choice words really, but following up with that would aid my annoyance in a way that I would rather not further. I imagine you have more than a few. Of course he would see right through me. The second old man then sat down right next to me, as though our running into each other was no coincidence. He was another childhood friend of both myself and the one I was lamenting over, and someone who followed a remarkably different career path than either one of us. It's still bothering you that much? Why don't you just go and see him? You have his address by now, surely. How could I with how much time that's passed? As I mumbled my response meekly, I thought I could hear the man next to me chuckle. Well, I suppose no need to rush things. To where your lines of work, I'm sure your paths will cross naturally enough in due time. Didn't expect that kind of response. Make it sound so romantic. Now, I mean, my presumption, I don't know that much about the Kuro games, but I'm presuming that's the main character is who this lady is lamenting over. Unless you have forgotten, I don't struggle with expressing what's in my heart the way he does. Now, since we're here, how about a toast, and I'll make your next one non-alcoholic. Unless you have forgotten, I can handle my liquor just fine, thank you very much. We then spent the rest of our time reminiscing about the past. It had been too long since we were able to just sit and talk like this. It wasn't that he and I had become estranged, but both of our jobs made it a trying task to meet even at the best of times. By the way, I heard you turned down becoming an A-rank bracer again. Of course, that wouldn't escape the CID's ears. Okay? I was kind of wondering, okay, well, what's his job? But we got it. The information itself wasn't confidential, but that he already knew something, however unofficial it was entirely typical of him. Bracegill focused on protecting civilians, while the CID focused solely on the needs of the president in office. The groups were neither enemies nor allies, they simply had very different goals where work was concerned. I know it in my place to tell you to accept the offer, however. He paused before resuming, his tone becoming markedly more serious. Times to live and demand a new hero, that much is clear. I had no idea what a realist like him was trying to say by implying I was a hero. Before I could inquire further, he changed to the subject that was likely what brought him to find me in the first place. And if you don't mind, I have something that will be of interest to you regarding those missing children. Eyes widened from the unexpected change, he continued. If you didn't about the group that made the district their turf, as well as have compelling evidence of a crime taking place, you may proceed as you like in cooperation with the police. Couldn't believe it. A fine silver platter he had given me just cause to act. Since the information came from the CID, there was no reason to doubt its veracity. I felt that I was on the verge of rekindling my girlhood desires. All I'd done till now was follow life where it was taking me. Yet here I found myself before a new path that could lead to someone I once wanted to be. This deviation terrified me. What if it led to me losing someone again? What if it ended in more pain? My fear begged me to stay idle. I was a fragile human being at my core, I knew it as well. It made me wish I was anything but. It inspired me to take up the sword and rebel against any whispers of weakness, and I played the part admirably on the surface. If I were forced to face cruel reality in the future, I wondered, would my heart be able to take it? Useless Ison. As I sidestepped to the left, I shifted the center of gravity and unleashed a flurry of slashes against my first foe, using that momentum to thrust both myself and my blade towards my second. You just said that. Two low-ranking mobsters fell to the ground. They were members of a mafia I'd been chasing, and right now I was in the thick of their den of operations. My friend gave the guild and police the excuse we needed to take a more direct stance against our targets. His information was vague, however, so we still had to discern their precise location on our own. I, Zen, and several other bracers agreed it would be best to split our forces and attack several locations in unison for this part in our mission. Based on what just transpired, it appeared my location was the lucky runner. There's the intruder! Yeah, I've seen her before. She's on the paper! Think I can get a date? 2 more reinforcements arrived, but I was hardly going to give them time to act. I raced forward, swinging my blade twice as I passed them, and they fell before they could even raise their weapons. I advanced. Monsters appeared in droves. Presumably word of my arrival had already spread. There she is! She's that bracer word's been going about, man. Damn it, what if the immovable's here too? Don't be chicken shit, it's one woman, we can take care of her. if he had a dialogue title, if he was an NPC with a name, but like not a real name, but like, you know, one of those things that like rumor loving student, he would be guy who cannot handle one lady. That would be his title. They then charged me en masse, at least 10 of them, with more reinforcements on their way from further inside the building. Forcing my way through with how many they had and their numbers was risky. Maybe the sensible thing to do would be to wait for the other bracers to show. I also had to consider, what if my waiting afforded the Mafia the time to wield the children as hostages? Weighing the two options, I concluded that whatever reduced the chance of that happening was worth the cost. I needed to push on and settle this, now. Besides, I believe I had nothing to fear from this pitiful group as they were. Were they seasoned combat veterans? They could have used their numerical advantage to implement complex formations and corner me, but they did no such thing. The amateurs. And they dared to believe they held a candle to Heiuei's martial arts? In the face of one of my experience, their bloated size was more of a hindrance than a help. They wouldn't even be able to utilize even half their potential against me. I first had to position myself and them appropriately. If I could ensure the gun-toting wielders among them were in each other's line of fire while rounding up the close-range fighters to a single spot, they would soon have bigger worries. Friendly fire. Their vulnerabilities would then spell my victories. I cut them down. 1 down, 2 down. The precious seconds after defeating a foe were the most advantageous. Just as a man had fallen, I was on my way to another before they had time to adjust to my incoming blade. There was no pattern to who was next by design. I chose my targets with stunning erraticism, throwing them into complete disarray as more collapsed to the ground. 3 down, 4. I would go around them in a wide circle. I would move between them, while remaining ever aware of any surprise assaults on my back. I waded through them until I encountered the ones furthest back. These ones never even considered. I would be able to reach them. They were spread so carelessly. The men took up their guns with newly alert panic strewn across their faces, but their fate was already sealed. They were powerless as I closed the gap between us. 5, 6, 7. With over half their numbers down, the remaining mobsters are quickly losing their will to counter. Some attacked out of adrenaline-induced desperation, calculated their next move so poorly that they fell into my long-set trap and accidentally attacked themselves. At this point, the battle was as good as final. All I had to do was continue taking them down until I was the last one standing. Should've just used your S-Craft if you killed them all at once, idiot. There were smaller groups I encountered on my way through the building, but I was able to disable them with little effort. The path they opened up for me eventually led me to their leader. He was a middle-aged fellow, pacing restlessly around an unpleasantly gaudy room until I entered. He twitched in fear upon the very sight of me. Why are you here? Where are my men? Kissing the floors. I answered so calmly and concisely that he balked in disbelief. That's impossible. I sweat my balls off to build this group from the ground up, and you're saying a girl like you just tore them all down like that? Man! What do you mean I'm some random lackey in a side story? What about my story? Does it not get to go on? Me? My boss guy? As I ignored his crude language and drew closer. As I thrust my sword till it sat just between his eyes, he let out a squeal. I'm no ordinary girl. I'm a bracer. And don't worry, I didn't kill them. They've only been knocked out or restrained. I don't know, man. Those are kind of some slashy slashes. You'll be seeing them again soon. In prison. Shot a darkened glare in his direction as the tip of my sword wandered downward to his neck. Non-lethally, of course. I have some questions for you and you will answer them. The man nodded emphatically, his whole body trembling with fear. 2 children, a boy and a girl under 10 years old, disappeared last month. Your people abducted them, didn't they? He nodded. I knew it. Then where are they? What'd you do to them? They're in a room further inside. They're alive. At last, I could breathe a sigh of relief. My most fundamental objective when coming here could be fulfilled. Next, I needed to ask him more about his group. Thought you all seemed far too weak to be in charge of the district of the city. After coming across your accountant book, everything fell into place. You're working on behalf of someone else, aren't you? He was unsure how to respond, or he was so unsure of how to respond that he fell completely silent, but that alone gave me my answer. Who is it then? Tell me. Is it A? I can't. He flinched in fear as I pressed him, resisting as though he genuinely couldn't say. Then just as he opened his trembling lips to speak, I heard a strange thud sounding from outside the room. I stepped away from the man, my sword still firmly in my hand. Crunching, squelching, splattering. More sounds, these more audible than the first. I didn't know what to make of them, but they made me feel an instinctive revulsion as they dragged on. May have been accompanied by faint groans, but if they did, they faded just as soon as the sounds themselves. I feel like our mobsters may not be having a good time. I remained on guard as I stepped out in the hallway, ready to be attacked from any angle at any moment. The sight that greeted me defied all imagination. The monsters I fought through mere minutes before were now nothing more than distorted, mutilated piles of flesh and bone. Not just one or two, every single one of them, without exception, had been reduced to bloodied mounds. Some were without heads, others had their organs ripped from their abdomens. Then there were those with their skulls caved in and leaking pulverized brain matter, the ones with their hearts pulled and squeezed. Each corpse was different, each corpse was unbearable to look at. The plain hallway I traversed with all due speed was now covered in a sticky, slimy red. Who could have done something like this? The sight was so awful that my free hand, now clenched, shook from disgust. When was it ever necessary to go this far? What could anyone have to gain from this? Wait, no. I realized I just made a very careless mistake. I turned and hurried back to the room I was just in. And I was too late. Mafia's leader was floating in the air at the center of the room, as if some unknown force was holding him up by his chest. A monstrous sword pierced through his chest. A single streak of blood dripped from his unspeaking mouth. His ass got Sephiroth'd. There was no room to believe he was anything but dead. Like all others in the hallway, he didn't have time to scream before his life was taken. Who are you? I barked at the center of the room, trying to drown out my instinctive fear with anger. At a glance, only the corpse and I were present, but as I strained my eyes, I could see the faint contours of another distorting the space around them. Must have been some sort of active camouflage. I would have thought it basic courtesy to give your name before asking another's charming ace of the Bracer Guild. A man's voice that projected true arrogance, as though he were above all others as a matter of course. I instinctively readied myself for battle in response, and my actions seemed not to faze him in the slightest. None to do spoiling for a fight. I'm simply here to take out the trash after they were careless enough to leave a trail for the CID to follow. Was I really talking to a fellow human being? How could he speak of such gruesome murders in those terms? What? Someone who can gruesomely murder someone is a bad guy? Maybe a business partner of theirs. No, you'll see from a group above them. Very good. He then swung his blade to slide and tossed the corpse off to the side with all the respect of a used cigarette. How can you treat people you work with like this? People? Have you your ears? Said nothing about taking out a person, only trash. The same applies to the garbage piling up in the hallway. They've always been so, even before they stopped breathing. That's a banger line. It was clear that communicating with someone of his nature was impossible. I dismissed calm reason for an intense, all-consuming anger so great that my entire body couldn't stop trembling. You monster! Before I knew it, I'd sprung into action, pounding every drop of my strength in my blade to launch a swift, unavoidable strike. A swift, unavoidable strike that was instantly avoided. But he repelled it with one single vertical swing of his own. So one exchange was enough to tell me that his strength is well a league above mine. He parried my blow at the most perfect instant, cancelling out the force of my attack with so little effort that it barely scratched the surface of what he was capable of. Active camouflage did nothing to hide the monstrous nature of his cruciform sword either. Its design combined silver and black in an unholy fusion of darkness and light, as if chaos itself dwelled within its very blade. It was no common weapon. Even if I continued to give it my all, my odds of winning against him were extremely slim. At the same time, my instincts were screaming at me that I could not allow him to leave. I charged again. If attacking him from the front was going to work, then I'd have to go for his side. He blocked that attack with just as little effort. I wasn't done yet. I refused to stop moving, flashing a third time with even more speed than the first two. Showered him a flurry of them, each one faster than the last. Finally, I reached my physical limit. I darted in a new direction, attacking him from behind. I put my very soul into one overwhelming attack, aimed directly at his rear, which I could only just make out through the camouflage's distortion. Somebody didn't equip their hit quartz. I got him! However, the second I became sure that victory was within my grasp, his cruciform blade carved a great arc through the air in a ferocious spinning slash. I was able to instantly defend myself against the blow, but the force of it sent me flying backward. I was fortunate enough to not have sustained the direct hit. My body shook from being from now being able to fully cancel out its massive weight. Still, I forced myself back to my feet and glared at his form. The difference between us was night and day. It felt as though he could manipulate the very flow of battle, much like a master of martial arts who understood the true nature of all things. The true nature of all things! He paid no mind to my pitiful attempt at bravado and gave a short laugh before speaking. Impressive. You put up more of a fight than the rumors had led me to believe. What's your goal? What are you trying to do with all your strength? I expected him to reject or ignore me, so I was just taken aback when he paused for a sincere moment of thought before answering. Interesting question. I suppose to instill fear? Fear? I almost doubted my ears. Fear is at the heart of all we know. Domination and servitude, order, harmony, production, all of it exists because of fear. Why, and seek to instill fear in its purest form, much like the attributive tower that appeared in Crossbell half a year ago. Such a pity that it fell. There was such pleasure in his words that it made it easy to imagine the expression on his veiled face. As insane as what he was saying sounded to me, I knew he meant every word of it. You really are a monster. Continue your foolish attempts to stop me and you'll understand what I mean in due time. He lowered his blade. The parting gift for assisting me in my house-cleansing efforts, I'll let you and the children go. Keep that far too pristine blade sharp for our next meeting, Bracer. With that, he turned to leave. Think he's the president? I mean, well, I guess you wouldn't be able to recognize him, right? If his face is all got the active camouflage, but I feel like that's the president. Because of course the president has to be the ultimate badass, because reasons, alright? Once we let Osborn be the ultimate badass, now the new president has to be even more of an ultimate badass. This is like extending my hand, the ground below him emitted a bright glow. By the time that glow had faded, he was gone. He had likely used the same teleportation spell that certain other criminal organizations are known to rely on. Why could only the bad guys teleport? His departure also released all the strength I had left in me. Not from relief, but from the exact opposite. I was so overwhelmed with frustration that I let him leave, so afraid of what he might go on to do because I couldn't stop him, that I lost the strength to even stand. Of course, this is just who I've always been. I haven't changed one bit since the day you left me. Still the same powerless girl was back then. The work here wasn't finished yet. I walked to the next room. Opened the door and was greeted by what appeared to be an old storage space. There across the hall, I found who I was searching for. The brother and sister pair were slouched against the wall, the boy trembling on the floor as his sister stood close by. It's okay, I'm here to help you. I kept my tone as gentle and reassuring as I was able to. The girl smiled while her older brother continued to hide his face. I slowly walked towards them, careful not to make any sudden movements, but as I did, the boy shook his head vigorously. His whole body trembled more the closer I got, as though he were telling me to stay away. The answer from that man flashed in my mind. Fear is at the heart of all we know. These poor children were very much in fear's clutches. No matter how gradual I was in closing the distance between myself and the boy, trying my best not to provoke him, his body language showed he continued to reject me. They were now within arm's length of one another. His shaking grew more violent, and though he opened his mouth to speak, his voice refused to come out. It's alright. I smiled a most comforting smile. After that, I reached out behind me and grasped the blade of the knife that was being thrust towards me. I turned swiftly, my fingers never letting go, and found the one gripping the hilt to be none other than the sister. She had tiptoed around my back while I was kneeling to meet her brother and tried to stab me from behind. She was a bit startled by my halting her attack, but otherwise she stared blankly forward, emotion on her face nowhere to be seen. I suppose he was right about fear. It controls everything we do. It must have been through something truly terrifying if it made you resort to this. No doubt they were now conditioned by fear to attack anyone who came to their rescue. I paid no mind to the blood from my bare hand slowly dripping to the floor. The cut from the knife was nothing compared to everything else at the moment. First priority was instead to reassure the girl that I meant no harm. But we humans are capable of more than giving in to that fear. We can fight it with courage. We can fight it. Your brother was doing that just now. He may have been gripped by fear, but he still fought his hardest through his actions to alert me of the danger his sister posed. Even if it took all he had, he wanted to keep me safe, and to keep her from committing an irreversible, regrettable act. Thanks to him that I noticed what she was trying to do. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm a bracer, and I'll keep you safe. I took the girl into my arms. A bracer? Even her voice was devoid of emotion. That's right. I'm here to help you. I think I've seen you in a magazine before. Something Blade, I think. It's alright, the nickname's a little embarrassing, but I'd be happy if you remembered it. That way, as long as you hear it, you'll know. I'm here to keep you out of harm's way. I tightened my grip around her as if to stop anything more from hurting her and surround her heart with my warmth. It really will be okay. I promise. I noticed her eyes twitch just slightly, and before long her eyes filled with tears. Soon she began to sniffle, first a small one here and there, till they gradually grew more pronounced, eventually turned into uncontrolled sobs. She had finally been liberated from her fear. And as for me, I'd stayed my course. I was too afraid to deviate from my current path. Still, I had chosen this path with pride in my heart. I didn't think it was right to turn my back on her now. Ooh, banger, banger alert. I wasn't going to let it be an aimless journey from now on either. So, it was another day in the Edith branch of Calvard's Guild. Sounds like that mafia was trying to copy what the other organization of assassins managed to pull off. Hey! I was discussing the recent case with Zen. Siblings had indeed been abducted because they witnessed an illegal transaction. The mafia involved then thought to mimic a group of assassins known for raising children with the intent of turning them into professional killers. Their attempts thankfully proved as unsuccessful as their attempts to remain covert in selling drugs. CID found them, and whoever they were working for purged them. Hell of a way to go. Hadn't been so incompetent, maybe they wouldn't have been purged at all. Don't beat yourself up about it. The Guild's priority is to keep civilians safe, not criminals. Well, technically criminals are civilians. Technically. I mean, even if there is like some law that's like, if you commit a crime, you're like, your citizenship is stripped. You haven't been convicted of anything yet. I don't want to say they deserved it for getting involved in organized crime, but it is what it is. Stop putting that frustration you're feeling into some more personal growth instead of letting it eat you alive. I mean, I agree. I mean, you know, you kidnap kids, fucking, you know, whatever happens, happens. Do I think they should be, like, murdered on sight? No. Was she justified in knocking them out? Yes. Does anyone care that they died? No. I was told that while the civilians were going to need psychological counseling for some time, they were fully expected to recover and go back to their everyday lives. My meeting with him had triggered something inside of me. I came to realize that something needed to change, and I had to take some kind of step forward. Even if it ended in me falling to the floor in some dramatic fashion, I just needed to pick myself back up again. With that in mind, I accepted my multiple recommendations. The times we live in demand a new hero. Doing so made me think of what my childhood friend said to me. I didn't believe I had what it took to be a hero. But if I could, even for just a brief one, if I could be one, just a brief one able to give the people hope and banish the darkness ahead, and that was reason enough to keep going. Maybe that could make me somebody enough to fight alongside the real hero once they came to light. Well, shall we get down to business? He then turned to face me, his classic broad grin even broader than usual. A while longer for the official paperwork arrives from headquarters, but I'm sure. Don't mind me speeding up this part of the process with how much they wanted this. The Republic now is a bracer who reached A rank at the same age as the Empire's Purple Lightning. Congratulations on your promotion, Elaine Auclair, Beauty's Blade. Okay, we got her name. That one's really good. Like, that's like some great opening characterization for someone. Oh, is there another one? No. Okay, we're good. That seems like a good way to end it. Oh, hello. You got the damn threads of fate. Suspension of causality, recording engine activity confirmed. Force connection to astral link severed. A whirlpool of causality engulfing Erebos, and the fated land has at last been unraveled. Though the bell ringing in the end of days is yet to be silenced. It's them damn bells, man. They can't be trusted. They're just as bad as the spirit veins. You, children of Zamiria, have earned your moment of peace until the time comes to face the final hour. Till you, with hope and fear in your hearts, must walk new trails. Okay, back to Lloyd. But yeah, that was really good. I quite enjoyed that. Great opening characterization. Like, Chickadee probably already has like better characterization than like a lot of characters that had 5 games of Cold Steel. Not naming any names or nothing, but I mean, I'll be honest. Not to put you on blast, Laura, but Chickadee was like more engaging than you have been in the entire game. And I don't even dislike Laura. I mean, that section was like enough that I'm like, man, I just want her to be the main character. She seems kind of cool. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. You know, you had some people dying as well, even if it is just unnamed goons. That was nice, I guess. I think other stuff. Yeah, because that one went a lot faster because there wasn't as much like commentary for me, because you know, it's a much more serious affair than like the Rin thing, so I didn't really want to be as like, there wasn't as much to like joke and like break up the pacing about. But yeah, just really solid all together. Probably one of the best daydreams. Of those 3, that's the best one, definitely. And the other 2 are still pretty good. I don't think I have really any issues at all with that one. Other than like the start of like, oh my gosh, she's like so beautiful and she's the greatest combat person ever. But at least you did kind of have her getting like immediately humbled within the same section. So it didn't bother me that much. But the initial vibes were a little like, oh my god, look, she's so perfect, which not really a fan of. But they pulled it back. And I just liked a lot of the internal monologue type stuff. I love internal monologues and things like that. It's one of the things I do like about visual novels, and you know, these are very much written in the style, because not just like usually visual novels have a very specific style of like writing. Because there's not as much need for like direct prose in regards to like describing things, they're usually more focused on dialogue and or internal monologues and thought processes, as opposed to,
I bet we could fish here.
Fishing. There's basically very little time spent fishing in your standard visual novel. But like, I just like that approach, because personally, like when it comes to like, I don't read very many books nowadays. But I used to read a lot of books when I was younger. And I've always preferred things that are more dialogue heavy or introspective than like reading about like a room being described. Because frankly, that stuff just makes my brain glaze over. And that is one thing I do kind of like about visual novels as like a medium format. Is that there's not as much time spent on that. And plus I'm a pretty visual person. So I like having just even some sort of image to tie things together a little bit. Now that one was pretty light on the imagery, like probably Reen's had the most overall, it felt like. Like that one basically kind of just had like the image of Chickadee. But it worked. But yeah. I mean, there's a lot you can say about whether or not, you know, even if the, like, I think the medium is cool. Now you can debate over, like, the quality of, you know, the writing of visual novels and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of trash out there, but that's the same is true for, like, you know, any medium, right? Like 95% of it's god awful. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. Speaking of visual novels, though, we do have this still to do, which will be its own video. Its own very long video, probably. But yeah, no, those are really good. I'm glad those are in the game. They're kind of a nice way to set up the next future stuff. Pretty interested. I don't think anything else to... you know, there is one thing I kind of thought about doing by popular request.
I bet we could fish here.
Well, not you, Lloyd. I'm not talking about your requests. This is the reward for sitting through this. I don't know if we need it. Take me to the 6th stratum. I'll squirm for you. No, not the... I don't actually go to the midpoint. Take me back. We'll do what I presume is the most cursed team mission.
Huh. That's some glow on...
Now, I think we need... I don't remember if you need to have 4 of the members in or not, but we'll do it. It's not exactly the way I want to end the...
Dear me, you're quite unlucky.
At least this isn't the last bonus video, so we're not ending it on this note.
Now then.
Oh, just look at all these little angels I've been blessed with. It's like I've died and gotten a first-class ride straight to heaven.
Come on, Lapis Rose. Let's make this the
It's not cute.
cutest group hug ever.
It's not cute. She doesn't have pure intentions.
I would rather pass. I'm quite good. I can't do that. What if the pressure left wrinkles on my beautiful dress?
See, Roselia's a predator as well,
if you
so
won't
she
come to me,
knows.
then I'll just have to come to you. One way or another, you're both getting all my love.
That's...
No, she got me again. My dress. Nadia, Swin, help me. There is no escaping Angelica when she's locked onto you, huh? We may want to tip off our pals in the SSS before she turns her personal heaven into our personal hell.
Lloyd arresting the villain, the true villain of Erebonia. I'd be down with that. Alright, I did it. You happy? It was really bad. I hate it.
Trade phantasmal shards.
There. Oh yeah, and apparently this is because of the book protagonist is the connection here. Because when I was reading it, I just focused on the swift and sure part. So I was like, these guys aren't fast. I didn't even read the protagonist thing. But I guess we could do that one. That one actually seems... Now that I know what the connection there is, actually I'm kind of interested to see what they say.
Central core activated.
Claim victory 3 turns. Okay, so we'll do this and then we'll end the video on a positive note. 3 turns 2 times? How the hell do I do that? How the hell do I do that, man? Anybody up getting the arts buffed? Total? Gang? Okay, Regulus, me? Alright, we'll just pause.
I can't believe the real-life Toby is standing in front of me. Does that mean Ein was based on a real person too?
He doesn't know.
So you, you read that, huh? Well, this is awkward. Carnelia doesn't exactly paint me in the best
What are
light.
you talking about?
You think you've got it rough? Imagine my surprise when I learned my own granddaughter read of my youthful misadventures with alone. Very alone. Oh? Doesn't sound very alone to me. Looks like I'm gonna have Emma give me the lowdown on how Miss Red Moon Rosy Cheeks got down.
You're too young.
The novel isn't half as salacious as what you're thinking, you foul-minded girl!
No mention of Swin and Nadia's book, though.
Job's done.
But, alright, that one's fun. I don't remember why we didn't do that one at the time. But, little bro havers. Oh, man. No. We gotta call it eventually. I'm surprised how many of those there are. I feel like it's like... I don't know, because I feel like I've done like 45 of them. And there's still several more. And plus, I guess some of them, it's not that they repeat, it's that some of them just are the same, but without McBurn. Like the slacking one is just one without McBurn, and then the one that I thought repeated with the monsters was, it just didn't have McBurn. For some reason, there's two versions, one with McBurn and one without. I guess because he's like an added-on character, but it's very strange. Yeah. But we're gonna call it here. Still got one more bonus video to do where, speaking of books, we read the books. It'd be fun. Yeah. Good time with the Beyond the Reverie daydreams. Those are very good. The last one in particular. Great. Already big fan of Girly Lady. She's cool. Like, you know, not to throw shade, but I feel like she got like some really good characterization there in like her 40 minutes. Which is a good example of how powerful daydreams can be when you just like get to hyper focus on one character and like see things exactly from their perspective with some nice introspection and things like that. Like you get a good overall idea of her character and things like that. Instead, you know, we got some good daydreams. We also have some total, absolute, complete and total trash daydreams, not naming any names or nothing. No daydream in particular do I think is complete and total trash and awful and makes me think Aurelia and Bardius are bad people. Because either they're bad people or the section is badly written and their actions make no sense. It's one or the other. I was a little flabbergasted, like nobody agreed with me that like that daydream was bad. Or that, you know, Aurelia and Bardius like testing their love is like a cruel thing to do considering the circumstances that they're in. Or you have the whole section where like her father backs off and is like, oh, okay, I get it. You clearly love this Makarov guy. We're going to drop this whole arranged marriage thing. And then Aurelia shows up and then just they keep going at it for some fucking reason because she thinks it's funny because she's a piece of shit. Shit. It gets my blood boiling. They're not acting like good people. And I don't know what the daydream is supposed to accomplish other than make me think Aurelia and Bardius are not good people. I would have liked to have had, because we could have had like another one that was as good as these last three that we just did. Ah! But alrighty. We'll call it here. I'm Extra Cheesy 87. Stay tuned for the next part. And bye, guys. Alrighty, so I think I'm going to tack this on to the end of the third bonus video, because there's something I wanted to talk about, but I didn't really know where to fit it in. I didn't really want to put it into the discussion video, because I feel like it's a little too off topic, and I want the discussion video to be somewhat short, which I can also confirm for you that the discussion video will be happening. I've written about maybe 70% of my notes for it, so that's enough that I feel committed to it. But basically, I really should have probably written some of this stuff down. Yesterday, the Osborne video, the Osborne Daydream video went up, to which many people immediately told me that I was a dumb, stupid idiot who didn't understand that the rivalries weren't lethal. Okay, I'm joking. Nobody was actually rude. I'm pretending to be persecuted. But people pointed out that the rivalries are never mentioned to be like lethal by default. Just something I talk about in that video in regard to like my thoughts on Osborne and like Reen being an Awakener. So, you know, my initial thought was, oh god, that's embarrassing. I can't believe I had such a fundamental misread of such a major mechanic of the story. And then I thought about it some more, and I was like, there's no way I would have just invented this idea, right? I mean, I forget some stuff, but I wouldn't have invented this idea and been so committed to it, I don't think. So I did some investigation, and it turns out both parties are right. I'm a little right, everyone else is a little right. The reason I'm a little right is because when the rivalries are introduced in CS4, when they're first like officially explained, I should say, they're not, I mean, they're technically introduced in CS2, but when they actually tell you about the true rivalries and what they entail, they describe them as a death match about 3 times in like 2 minutes. Now, maybe that's a translation thing. If so, basically it doesn't matter because I can only go off of what the English script says, and that's, you know, what I base all my thoughts and judgments on. Or like, that's my reasoning behind things, or behind what I think about the story. Crow says they're a death match, or that the rivalries are death matches. Gaius then follows up and describes them as battles to the death, and then Reen also uses the phrase duel to the death, like in about a 2-minute time span. So 3 different times they hammer home that these are meant to be lethal affairs, and that's, you know, the initial explanation, so I think that's why it stuck with me so much. There's also additional confirmation of my idea, because like basically my idea, or the way I felt like it was explained, is rivalries are lethal affairs, but Reen figures out a way to do them in such a way that he can absorb most of the essence without actually killing the Awakener. In Crow's case, it happens because, well, Ordine still needs to have a corporeal form to keep Crow alive. And basically that, you know, because of his connection to Crow, he's able to abort the process in a way that wouldn't normally have been thought to be possible, which is why they're all mentioned to be explicitly lethal. Because they never make any distinction about it's only lethal for Crow or immortals or anything like that. This idea is also supported a little bit later in the game, or a lot of it later, when you're talking to Albrecht before the Rufus fight, where he describes the Nosferatu, and he states that Nosferatu or that each of the swords at the trial grounds was a place where a divine knight lost a rivalry, and also marks the grave of their awakener, and says the part about how when divine knights are damaged, they will eventually regenerate, but in the meantime, the awakeners usually become Nosferatu. So that means that you can lose a rivalry and not technically die, but if your connection is severed to your divine knight, you know, you're going to pass because there's like a pact between the two, was my understanding. And that kind of fits, because basically a rivalry can have 3 outcomes. And we know what the 3 outcomes, like the consequences of them are. A, Awakener dies, Divine Knight doesn't, you become an immortal who's tied to your Divine Knight. B, both of them die, and the Awakener's just dead, and the Divine Knight will eventually regenerate some undetermined time later. Or, the Divine Knight dies and the Awakener doesn't, the Divine Knight will eventually come back, but in the meantime, the Awakener becomes a Nosferatu. That would be the fate of the characters who lose their rivalries, is one of the 2, right? Either they die in the process, or their Divine Knight is defeated and destroyed, and in the case of the true rivalries, they're completely absorbed, so they're not gonna, you know, you can't be an immortal, right? Because the Divine Knights are completely gone. But Reen is able to figure out some way to do it where he absorbs most of their essence, but still keeps some around, which lets Cedric and Rufus live, which also kind of squares with the idea that the Divine Knights aren't fully gone, right? Like, as evidenced by the stuff with turfing and whatnot, like, they still kind of are lingering around a little bit. So the idea that he slurps up enough of the Divine Knight's soul, but leaves just enough that Cedric and Rufus don't become, like, Nosferatu because they severed their connection, like, made sense to me. And that's why, or that's my reasoning for why the rivalries are meant to be lethal affairs, or, like, that's the conception of them. And that Osborne has no reason to think there was any other way to resolve a rivalry than with the parties dying. Because the only other option in which someone can lose a rivalry and still stay alive is in the situation like what happens to Crow and Aryan Road, where they die but their Divine Knights don't, those are kind of outliers because they die in what are not really rivalries. Because in theory, the only way a Divine Knight can die is in a rivalry, right? The only thing that can hurt a Divine Knight is another Divine Knight. So any case in which an Awakener dies in combat would be, by definition, a rivalry. But they both die in kind of weird situations where they're fighting the Vermilion Apocalypse, who doesn't really have, like, an Awakener, and they don't get a chance to, like, slurp up their soul. So they're the kind of very strange outliers when it comes to the Immortals. And, like, Osborne's also technically an Immortal, but that's different because he, you know, makes the pact with Ishmelga ahead of time. And then there's Rutger, who, frankly, does anybody know what the hell the explanation for Rutger was? I feel like there actually wasn't one. I think that's the one thing that I said this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, and then, like, there was no comment. Because usually whenever I say something that makes no sense, somebody will come and try and defend it, and sometimes the defenses convince me, and sometimes they don't. But I feel like in Rutger's case, everyone was just like, yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone will come in and say, actually, you're wrong. It does make sense, which, I mean, I hope it does. I don't feel like it did, but like, they don't really explain it. Other than just like, they took Rutger's body to the Platinum Knight and he got brought back to life somehow, which doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to talk about that some. About like why I thought that, and it's not that I'm a dumb idiot who didn't understand the plot. It's that, because I mean, I get why everyone like, upon thinking about it, I get why everyone says that they're not meant to be lethal. Because, I mean, there's two things. A, the obvious fact that Cedric and Rufus don't die. And there is kind of one line, like when Cedric is defeated, where Crow says something along the lines of like, even if he's not an immortal, losing a rivalry must have taken a lot out of him or something. Which I guess you could use that as textual evidence for like, okay, rivalries are only lethal if you're already an immortal. But the immortals are such like an exception to the rule that I feel like the base level explanation wouldn't factor in for them, right? Because not that many people can be immortals. Like Aryan Road is considered an exceptional example, right? Like, aside from her and Crow and Osborne, those are the only, like, there aren't any other characters that have been talked about that, you know, had abnormally long lives or anything like that. Like, it's just because Aryan Road died in such a odd way, where she was killed by a Divine Knight, but it was a Divine Knight that was, you know, like, it also died in the process. Like, that's the reason why she was able to become an immortal instead of just, you know, either straight up die or becoming a Nosferatu. Like everyone else. But yeah, so he says that. But also, in that scene, there's another thing that supports my viewpoint, which is that when Cedric gets popped out of the Divine Knight, and they initially kind of are acting like he's dead, right? Like, they have a line where they say, you know, is he ... And they're like, no, he's just unconscious. Because Reem be slurping up just enough of the milkshake, alright? He's not going full drainage. He doesn't slurp up all your milkshake. He's a nice kid. He just slurps up most of your milkshake. I don't know. I just wanted to at least explain myself some. About, like, why I had that thought process. Because I did feel a little dumb in the moment. And no one was rude about it or anything. Actually, one thing I will say, it's kind of funny. I mean, this is something I kind of was going to talk about in the discussion video, but I guess I'll just say it now. Is that, you know, this is the series with, like, the least toxicity by far of any of the, at least the Cold Steel games. And I mean, really, because I mean, the Sky games that had no toxicity because nobody watched them, and the same for Zero and Azure, only a little bit. And then Cold Steel, there was some peaking in Cold Steel 4, and then there's been basically none in Reverie, like no annoying comments. But it's also like my most disliked series by far, which is kind of funny that there haven't actually been any critical comments like what happened in like CS3 and 4, where people were like really mad at me when I'd say stuff sometimes. But like the actual like to dislike ratio on like every video is like 70%, which is, you know, it doesn't really bother me or anything. It doesn't really mean anything, but I do just think it's funny that this series is like a lot lower in that regard, but there actually hasn't been any toxicity. I don't know if it's just because like I shadow banned everyone in CS4, so maybe those people are still there yelling into the ether and just nobody's seeing it. I don't know if you have been leaving toxic comments every day and I haven't responded to them. That's because I haven't read them. In case there are any of those people. I don't know. It's just very, very strange. But yeah, we'll call it here in the third bonus video. Next time, fourth bonus video where we read, and then definitely discussion video. Gonna do that. Hopefully it'll be under 90 minutes. I said initially under an hour. I've made a more reasonable estimate of under 90 minutes. I mean, I think I'm like 70% of the way through and I have like 6 pages. So we'll probably end at like 8 or 9. But I was also more detailed. I didn't write in quite as many bullet points. I used more like big sentences compared to my normal like notes for discussion videos. Like the Persona 5 one was like 20 pages long and it was just bullet points of like abstract ideas. It was like 10,000 words. Never again. Goodbye, everyone and stuff. Okay, and there's another thing I remembered that I had to add, and by remembered that I thought of in regard to the rivalries being lethal. They have to be lethal for everyone but Reen, like in the sense that Reen has to be special in the sense that he's able to win the rivalries without killing someone, because if the rivalries aren't lethal for anyone but Immortals, the final fight between Reen and Osborn makes no sense. Because, think about it, if Osborn can win without killing Reen, there's no reason for them to actually fight. Reen and Osborn have the same goal at that point. They're just fighting over who gets to basically be the one to carry the burden. So, in theory, if Osborn can win the rivalry and absorb, you know, all the power without killing Reen, there's no reason he shouldn't implore Reen to, like, lay down his arms, let Osborn win so that he can take the final burden for him. But he doesn't do that. He says, nah, let's fucking fight, duel to the death in one final little slashy clash, which doesn't make any sense. He should, like, basically beg and plead Reen to not go through with it, not, you know, damn himself to eternal purgatory up in space hell. That's Osborn's fate. He wouldn't want that for Reen, you know, presuming that we believe he cares about him. Now, if the situation is that Reen dies regardless, then, you know, it kind of doesn't matter, right? Because it's either Osborn kills Reen with his own 2 hands by winning the rivalry, or Reen makes Osborn sacrifice for him. And I'll give Osborn a pass and presume that he didn't necessarily know that Reen was going to be stuck up in space hell forever. So, like, I think that sequence only makes sense if the rivalries are lethal. If it's Osborn can't actually win without killing Reen. So, that's another point for me. Basically, I'm right about everything ever, and people just try and gaslight me. Okay, I'm being facetious, but I do think that the story just doesn't... It makes more sense if the rivalries are lethal. Except for... Or, like, I think that's what they wanted you to think, kind of. Because the Osborn-Reen thing doesn't make any sense, and the way they're initially introduced, they say they're lethal. I don't know. I don't know why this has been bothering me so much, but I was thinking about it some more. I've been doing some thinking about, like, just Osborn in general, because I don't know exactly how much I'm going to talk about him in the discussion video, but while I was thinking about some stuff, I came to that thought as well, that it doesn't make any sense for them to fight to the death if... Or it doesn't make any sense for Rean to kill Osborn if Osborn could have just taken the burden for him. You know? And even if Rean wanted it, it doesn't make sense for Osborn to not have a scene where he basically begs Rean, like, hey, you know, don't do this. This isn't your fate. Let me take this burden for you. At the end of the day, I'm the reason you're here. It would actually be a really nice scene. So it's either they just didn't think of that, which, I mean, it's possible. I mean, basically, it's either it's a plot hole or I'm right. Those are your options. Either I get to be right or you have to accept the game as a plot hole. The end.